During the famine that had spread beyond Egypt, the brothers, they travel to Egypt to get some assistance. They travel for 18 days. They meet Yusuf, not realizing that their brother is now the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Distribution. And when they arrive, they are pleasantly surprised with the efficient and equitable system that is in place to provide relief to the citizens of Egypt and those who live beyond its borders. And they were told that the way that rations are distributed is that the food rations are based on the number of people in each household. So the 10 brothers, they arrive. They had brought with them goods that they intended to barter for food. They receive 10 camel loads of food, of grain. They have a conversation with Yusuf and they indicate to him that we actually have 11 brothers. There are 11 of us. And Yusuf alayhi salam says, the next time you come, I want you to bring this brother. You claim that you are 11. I want to meet this brother that you left behind. And if you bring him, I will give you a full camel load. And if you don't bring him next time, you will receive nothing. In fact, you will not be permitted to enter Egypt. The brothers return. They say to their father Yaqub that we met this generous minister. He hosted us. He showed us so much generosity and care. And if we want 11 camel loads of grain, of food, we have to bring Binyamin with us. If we don't, we will not be able to receive any more assistance. And then as they're unpacking their bags, they find that the goods that they had took with them to Egypt to barter, they were all returned to them. So this was another sign of the generosity of Yusuf alayhi salam. They beg and they plead with their father to allow him to let them take Binyamin. He says to them that the last time I entrusted Yusuf to you, you lost him. If you are to take Binyamin, you have to take an oath before Allah that you will look after him, that you will protect him. And that's precisely what happens. And then he gives them advice before they leave. He says, when you go back to Egypt, do not enter through one gate, but enter through different gates. And this is where we left off, ayah 68. وَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمَرَهُمْ أَبُوهُمْ مَا كَانَ يُغْنِي عَنْهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا حَاجَةً فِي نَفْسِ يَعْقُوبَ قَضَاهَا. The brothers, they travel back to Egypt. So this is their second trip to Egypt. And they follow the advice of their father Yaqub. They enter through different gates. It's interesting. These brothers, with all of their stubbornness and the harm that they brought to their father, in this case, all of the brothers, they complied. They obeyed him. So they entered in the way that their father had advised them. مَا كَانَ يُغْنِي عَنْهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْءٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that doing this was not going to prevent the calamity that was about to befall them. So the question is, why did Yaqub instruct his sons to enter through multiple gates? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, He did this. Why? إِلَّا حَاجَةً فِي نَفْسِ يَعْقُوبَ قَضَاهَا. There was a need in the heart of Yaqub that was fulfilled by giving his sons this advice. What was the need? What was the haja that was fulfilled? That he provided advice to his sons that protected them from unnecessary harm. Meaning, the advice that he gave them helped repel some of the difficulties they might have faced if they didn't listen to him. If they all came through one gate, perhaps they would have been stopped, they would have been questioned, because when these governments, when they see large groups of men, they're usually worried about security. They might have detained them because of a security issue. وَإِنَّهُ لَذُو عِلْمٍ لِمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ. Allah says, Yaqub, he was a possessor of knowledge. Knowledge that we taught him. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. It's very interesting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He praises Yaqub in this ayah for understanding something that most people don't understand. Now, what does this ayah mean? Yaqub alayhi salam, on the one hand, he trusts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at the previous verse, what did he say? He says, إِنِ الْحُكْمُ إِلَّا لِلَّهِ عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ وَعَلَيْهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُتَوَكِّلُونَ. You see, when it comes to this concept of tawakkul, you have two extremes. You have some people who are reckless. They don't take any precaution and they say, we place our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you have those who are on the other side of the spectrum. They have so much faith in their planning that they plan and they take precaution and they think that their planning is what will protect them. Yaqub, he has both. He takes precaution, but he doesn't trust and put his faith in his own planning and his precautionary measures. He does everything in his power to be cautious, but at the same time, he knows that if Allah decrees something, it's going to happen. And protection only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most people are not like that. Most people are either reckless, they don't plan, and they say, Tawakkaltu ala Allah. Just like the guy during the time of the Prophet, he brought his camel, he didn't tie his camel. And when he was told to tie his camel, he left it untied and he said, I place my trust in Allah. The camel disappeared. And this is where the Prophet, he teaches him, اعقلها ثم توكل. Tie your camel and trust Allah. Do both. And there are those who don't even think about God. They take precautionary measures, they plan meticulously, and they think to themselves, the reason why my camel was not stolen was because I tied it. They don't think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is not part of the equation. So Allah praises Yaqub for being among those rare people who plans, who is meticulous, who takes precautionary measures, but at the same time, he places his full trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ayah 69, وَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَخَاهُ. They return and they see Yusuf again. And again, the brothers are clueless that this is their brother Yusuf. A second time they see him, they don't recognize him. When they arrive, just as Yusuf did the first time, they bring their family. The 11 brothers are there. And Yusuf alayhi salam, he has his servants, his workers, load up the camels with food. And as the camels are being loaded up, the brothers sit for a meal. Yusuf alayhi salam, he hosts them in the same way that he hosted them last time. So what Yusuf does is the following. He organizes a number of spreads. And he says to the brothers that I want each brother to sit with his full brother. So these brothers, they come from different mothers. So for example, 2-3 brothers who are full brothers, they sit on one ma'idah, they sit together. Another 2-3 brothers, they sit together. So all of the brothers, they are grouped with their full brothers. And they have their meal in this way. Yusuf alayhi salam, he sees Binyamin sitting by himself. So Yusuf alayhi salam, he goes to him. He says, why are you not sitting with your brothers? He says, I don't have a full brother among them. He says, I had a full brother, but he disappeared. He was separated from us. His name was Yusuf. He was my only full brother. Yusuf alayhi salam, he sits beside Binyamin. And he says, since no one is sitting next to you, may I sit with you? So he sits with Binyamin. The Quran says, وَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَخَاهُ. He brings Binyamin close to him. And the Quran uses the word awa. Awa means that he gave him a sense of protection and security. You know, in the story of Nuh and his son, Nuh says about the mountain, سَآوِي إِلَى جَبَلٍ يَعْصِمُنِي مِنَ الْمَاءِ. I will seek refuge with in the mountain. So awa gives us the sense that Yusuf was speaking to him in a way that was putting him at ease. قَالَ إِنِّي أَنَا أَخُوكَ. He says to Binyamin, who's basically saying that, you know, my other siblings, you know, they're full brothers. I'm the only half brother. I'm the only one in the family who doesn't have a full brother. This is where Yusuf whispers to him, saying that I'm your brother. I am your long lost brother. I'm your full brother. فَلَا تَبْتَئِسْ. Don't be distressed, O Binyamin, بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Do not be distressed over what they used to do to you. If you recall at the beginning of the story, the brothers, they said what? لَيُوسُفُ وَأَخُوهُ أَحَبُّ إِلَىٰ أَبِينَا مِنَّا. That Yusuf and his brother, they are more beloved to our father than us. So the jealousy was directed to Yusuf and Binyamin. And it seems that during those years, the brothers, after they got Yusuf out of the picture, they used to torment Binyamin. So he says to Binyamin that you don't need to distress anymore. Don't distress about what they used to do to you. Now Binyamin is in shock. Growing up, he used to hear about this brother that he had. This special brother. This brother who was so beloved to his father Yaqub, and now he's sitting right next to him. And Binyamin is thinking to himself that I feel closer to this Yusuf who I've just met than these brothers that I've spent years with. So he says, according to the narrations, Binyamin says to Yusuf, let me stay here with you. I don't want to go back. I want to be here with you. Yusuf alayhi salam, he says that the only way that I can keep you here in Egypt is that I have to accuse you of something. So he fills him in on the plot that he has in mind. So Binyamin at this moment is the only one who knows that the minister of agriculture, the one who is being generous, is his own brother. The other brothers, the other 10 brothers, they are oblivious. The Quran says in ayah 70, فَلَمَّا جَهَّزَهُمْ بِجَهَازِهِمْ. After all of the camels were prepared, they were loaded up with grain and wheat and, the non-perishable foods that were given to them. جَعَلَ السِّقَايَةَ فِي رَحْلِ أَخِيهِ. Yusuf alayhi salam, either it was Yusuf directly or one of his aides, they place the siqaya of the king in the saddlebag of Binyamin. What is the siqaya? Saqa means to pour. Siqayatul Malik is basically the king's goblet. It's a very fancy cup that the king drinks from. It's probably made of gold. It has probably jewels. It's a very, very fancy cup. Yusuf alayhi salam, he puts this very precious item that belongs to the king. This was a very bold plan that Yusuf alayhi salam, he puts it in the saddlebag of Binyamin. Now, as they are leaving, as the brothers are leaving, you can imagine 11 camels filled with food. The brothers are finishing up their meal, and they are exiting the vicinity of the building. Now, when you go shopping, when you exit a supermarket, usually they have these metal detectors, right? You go, you purchase some clothes and they forget to take the tag off, and then the alarm goes off. At that time, they didn't have any of those detectors. They used to have someone who would stand and who would watch to make sure that no merchandise is being stolen. ثُمَّ أَذَّنَ مُؤَذِّنٌ. There is someone who's standing and he calls out. One of the soldiers cries out, أَيَّتُهَا الْعِيرُ إِنَّكُمْ لَسَارِقُونَ. O camel riders, you are thieves. Now the one who's making this call is not Yusuf. It's one of his soldiers. And this shows you that the government of Yusuf alayhi salam has zero tolerance for corruption. They watch everything. One cup is taken and they're aware of it. So he says that, O camel riders, you are thieves. The next ayah 71. You can imagine the brothers are shocked. What's going on? This must be a mistake. قَالُوا وَأَقْبَلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ مَاذَا تَفْقِدُونَ. You can sense that the brothers are innocent. They say as they are coming back. If you're a real thief and you hear someone saying that you guys are thieves, your impulse would be to run. No. Very calmly, they turn around and they're walking towards the soldier, and they don't say, what have we stolen or what has been stolen? They say, what are you missing? What have you lost? Because they know that they didn't steal anything. Ayah 72, قَالُوا نَفْقِدُ صُوَاعَ الْمَلِكِ. We are missing the suwa' of the king. Now it's interesting. What was put in the saddlebag of Binyamin was the siqaya, the cup. Here, the guard is saying, we are missing the suwa' of the malik. Why are these words being used? Are these two different things? One ayah says, Yusuf put the siqaya of the king in the saddlebag, and the guard is saying, we are missing the suwa'. Suwa' is a measuring device. And when we want to pay, kafarat or zakatul fitra, we have this concept of sa'. It's a unit of measurement. The commentators of the Quran, they say that suwa' and siqaya are descriptions of the same thing. The cup of the king was what was being used to measure the grain that was given to the people. It was symbolic. And the king almost saw it as a source of pride. It was almost like a PR campaign. That, look at, it's the cup of the king that is being used to feed the people. It's kind of a PR campaign. So it said, the guard says, we are missing the measuring instrument of the king. So this became a national symbol that during the famine, the king's cup is being used to measure out the food for the people who are suffering from poverty. وَلِمَنْ جَاءَ بِهِ حِمْلُ بَعِيرٍ وَأَنَا بِهِ زَعِيمٌ. They offer a reward, reward for whoever finds the king's cup. The guard says, and whoever finds the cup of the king, he will have a full camel load of food, an extra load of food. Ayah 73. So now the brothers are getting worried. Okay, now they're being called thieves. Now there is a reward for anyone who can find the cup of the king. قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ. Tallah is like saying wallah, but it's a more panicked oath. They're starting to panic. قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ عَلِمْتُمْ مَا جِئْنَا لِنُفْسِدَ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَمَا كُنَّا سَارِقِينَ. They say to Yusuf, they say to the soldiers, the guards, that you know that we did not come here to spread mischief. We came here for assistance. It's a famine. We're here for help. And we did not steal anything. Ayah 74, قَالُوا فَمَا جَزَاؤُهُ إِن كُنْتُمْ كَاذِبِينَ. The soldiers, the guards, they say, what should be the punishment if you're lying? If you are indeed thieves, what should the punishment be for theft? It's very interesting that they're putting it on them. What do you think the punishment should be? Because according to Egyptian law, the punishment at that time for theft was to be lashed. You're lashed and you're basically exiled. You're beaten, you're lashed. Ayah 75. قالوا جزاؤه من وجد في رحله فهو جزاؤه كذلك نجزي الظالمين. The brothers, they say in Palestine, in Canaan, if someone is guilty of theft, the thief becomes a slave of the person that he stole from. So we have a more harsh punishment when it comes to theft. I mean, this shows you how confident the brothers were that they didn't steal anything. They're just sharing with them the law in Canaan. So, if you find the king's cup in any of our saddlebags, the punishment is that we have to be slaves of that person that we stole from. Ayah 76, فَبَدَأَ بِأَوْعِيَتِهِمْ قَبْلَ وِعَاءِ أَخِيهِ. Either the guard or Yusuf himself, they start to search the saddlebags. So you can imagine 11 brothers are lined up. Each brother is standing beside his camel and his saddlebag. Now, to not make it obvious that this was planted, they begin searching the bags of the other brothers. The first brother, they search the bag, there's nothing. The first brother wipes the sweat from his forehead. He's safe. The second brother, they search. There's no cup. The third brother, the fourth brother, until they come to the camel and the saddlebag of Binyamin. ثم استخرجها من وعاء أخيه. Yusuf alayhi salam, he pulls out the king's cup from the bag of Binyamin. Now you might think, what a genius plan to keep Binyamin in Egypt. Flawless execution. The brothers are stunned. They're caught off guard. You might be thinking, Yusuf is a genius. How did he execute this plan? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here says what? كَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. Allah says this was not the plan of Yusuf. This was my plan that I dictated to Yusuf. Everything that Yusuf was doing was according to divine inspiration. ما كان ليأخذ أخاه في دين الملك إلا أن يشاء الله. It was impossible for Yusuf to bring his brother and keep his brother in Egypt according to the law of the king. What does this mean? In ancient Egypt, foreigners are not allowed to stay in Egypt. They're not granted permanent residency. They come and they have to leave. So ancient Egypt had a very strict immigration policy. If you're not Egyptian, you don't get to stay in Egypt. So how does Yusuf alayhi salam bypass this law? It's through the prescribed punishment that the brothers mention. And because he's in a position of power, he can make the argument that this is a positive because our country has acquired free labor. So now, Yusuf alayhi salam he declares Binyamin to be a slave. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then he says what? نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَّن نَشَاءُ. Allah says we elevate people in ranks based on who we wish. We elevate whoever we wish. We elevate them in ranks. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Allah says that we elevated Yusuf. Why did Allah Azza wa Jal raise up Yusuf? Why did He raise him in degrees? Because of two qualities that he had. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, what does He say? يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah says, we raise those of you, among you, who have faith, who have iman. And those who have knowledge, we raise them in degrees. What allowed Yusuf to go up the social ladder in Egypt? It was his knowledge, his ability to interpret dreams. Organizing this plot to keep his brother required what? It required knowledge. It required wisdom. So if we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us in ranks, we need to be people of iman and ilm. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. And above every possessor of knowledge is someone who is more knowledgeable. You find someone who has ilm, there's someone who has more knowledge. For example, in the time of Musa, You would think that Musa, he's a possessor of great knowledge. But there is someone out there who possesses more knowledge than Musa, which is Khidr. And even if you find the most knowledgeable person who has knowledge above all of them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. Inshallah, in the next verse, we find that the brothers, they accuse Yusuf of stealing. They say, we're not surprised that Binyamin stole because he had a brother in the past who also stole. Inshallah, we'll speak about that conversation tomorrow night. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.